You're listening to the Beans and Dice podcast, a podcast about how we game.
Hey folks, welcome to the Thursday night Beans and Dice podcast live call-in show. Hey, covering for the man who's not here today. My man Rob is not here with me today, but I'm one of your hosts. I'm Carlos, joined by...
I'm Mike.
I'm Wayne.
And our special guest, damn near a co-host at this point. He probably has the record for the most joining the Beans and Dice crew, all the way out from Oregon, Chris Scaffidi of Fervent Workshop. Chris, thanks for joining in again.
My pleasure. I always enjoy coming on here. I think you guys are probably holding the record for the best bants of 2023 on the entire internet. So, yeah, I'm here.
Let's do this. Chris, you're on for a special reason today. And folks, what we do, before we get going with Chris, Thursday nights, what we do, it's Beans and Dice. It's all about how we game. On Thursdays nights, it's all about how you game, because we open up the phone lines to let you call in, take over the show. You get to be the host of the show for 10 minutes when you call in, and you decide the topics. You get us in line. You tell us what we're wrong, all that fun stuff. So it becomes about how you game. But before we do that, we start with a little primer, a little conversation about what we got going on. And right now, coming up real soon, is a project that Chris has coming up, a dungeon crawler combo. Did I get that right?
Yeah, it's live, actually. It's been live for about a week.
Already live. All right,
yeah,
so I think it was upcoming last time we talked.
The Kickstarter is live, yeah.
Tell the folks at home what you got going on.
Okay, so this is, it's a combo of two games with new stuff. And then there's also an add-on of one older game. This one is a multiplayer game. And in it, you design a dungeon, and then you crawl an opponent's dungeon. And you fill your dungeon with all kinds of nasty beasts. So we'll talk about that later. This one came out as a print and play earlier this year. And so this Kickstarter is your first opportunity to get your hands on a physical copy. And it's all dry erase. So none of this business of printing a new set of dungeons every single time. And this one was a really, really, really hard one to produce in a physical form. And we can talk about that later if you want.
Yes. Then
this right here is a totally new game. This is my lovely, what do they call this? Proof copy. It's got this not for resale thing in the middle of it. And this thing is essentially like choose your own path book, or like we used to have these choose your own adventure books from Bantam when we were kids, but it's got lots of dice mechanics in it. So it's not like a choose your own adventure book where, you choose this and you choose that, and maybe randomly you win or you lose. I don't know. In this one, you have reasons for choosing one path or the other, but you can't just do whatever you want to do all the time. You have to succeed at these dice challenges. And there's 3 different kinds of dice challenges. And if you don't succeed at the dice challenges, then the bad guys get to do what they want to do to you. So we'll talk about all of those things later on as the conversation progresses. And then I'll briefly mention this guy. This is an older game also. This is the one that won all those art awards. And I think I was on your show back in the day when we did the print and play Kickstarter for this one.
Yeah, that was a BGG award winner there.
Yeah, so this one is available as an add-on. It's a city builder. It's very passive aggressive. It's actually kind of nasty, but not in an overt way.
Hey, Carlos, repost the link there in the chat, because that one's not working.
Will do. I'll get the engineer on it.
Okay.
My man Wayne.
Let me get it out here.
Okay.
Yeah, I think something about the links in the chats, like posting links in chats
do they shorten them up or something?
I don't know what they do to them. I remember Chris had trouble one time.
Yeah, the YouTube chat is terrible. The Discord works fine.
Yeah, go to the Discord, folks. Find our Discord, Beans and Dice. You can go to our Facebook page to find the link. I think I post the link in every description of our videos and our podcast. So there's other places you can find the link for the Discord. Join in the chat there, too.
Right.
So we went live, you say, about a week ago?
Yeah, the Kickstarter started on the 16th, which was a week ago Monday. And it already funded. It's got, let's see here. I think
107 backers. Nice.
Yeah. So it's going strong. Get lots of nice personal messages from people. It's very nice. Very, very encouraging and supportive and whatnot. And I'm having a good time with it. So this will close in mid-March. I didn't want to run into the Thanksgiving weekend. Don't want to compete with that because people are going to be thinking about Christmas and stuff like that. So yeah, as soon as it closes, I will place an order for all these books and all these copies of the games and then ship them out.
Well, let's talk a little bit about the games themselves. I watched the video. It was a cool video you linked in our Discord channel, I think before it went live. And it seems it's got this not aged, but like a nostalgic feel to it. Tell me about the design of the game, where you went with the direction.
So do you want to talk? Yeah, which one do you want to talk about first?
The polyomino type one, the one.
Okay, so we'll do that one first.
Which is, I think, more game.
Well, they're both games. This one's the multiplayer, and the other one is solo. So, yeah, let's pull out one of these dungeons here. So, during the game, you're going to be trying to fill in a dungeon like this one with nasty little creatures, and each creature has a certain shape. So, for example, there may be a creature with a shape like this. Like I just drew a creature, and it's got a certain shape. That was kind of a dumb place to look at to place it because it's going to be hard to fill that space. Certain orientations make more sense. And how do you get these creatures? So, have you played Seven Wonders?
Yes.
You know, everybody's got a bunch of cards in their hand.
Drafting.
Yep. You draft one of them, and you pass the rest to your neighbor, and you periodically draw additional cards. So these cards have on them the creatures, and each creature has a distinctive shape, as well as certain attack icons. So the one I drew in there had ice and a lightning attack, and there's also the necro attack. This is the Hydra. So in order to illustrate these, I got a lot of really, really old art from ancient bestiaries from the Middle Ages and early Renaissance. And they were all just like black and white line drawings. So they were really exquisite. Like there was this really great drawing of a Hydra. And then I went through and colorized it. And like this chick right here, she's a banshee that was inside of an illustration from the 1800s, I think. So public domain stuff just needed, you know, to be kind of brought up to modern standards in terms of expectations about color and shock value and things like that.
You did that with one of your original Gnome games.
Yeah, we're going to talk about the Gnome game a lot eventually because that guy's coming back on the radar.
Is he coming back on the radar?
That's going to come back on the radar, but not tonight.
Spoiler alerts, folks. But you did that with that original Gnome game. You went and used a lot of old Nordic art that no longer copyrighted. That it was what was the word we talked about? Public
domain. Yeah, I am a huge fan of using what's in the public domain. You know, people get up in arms about stealing stuff or using AIs and all this stuff, and I'm not going to litigate that. People, probably are right to be upset about a lot of that stuff, but all of that sort of misses this huge treasury of art that former generations have handed down to us. And 75 years after somebody's dead, in most countries, it's public domain. So now, anyway, back to the game. After you fortify your dungeon with a whole bunch of creatures, then you take your dungeon and you pass it around the table. And now those cards that you had drafted, you formed a discard pile with them. And all those same cards now, but on the opposite end, have spells. And you're going to use those spells to go and destroy the creatures of your opponent's dungeon so you can steal all his treasures. And to help you along in all of this, not only are the dungeons unique, each one of them, but every player has a unique character also. And that character has some unique spells that you can use, or they're right in here, to kind of help you out when you get into a little bit of trouble. Because these, like you play Tapestry, for instance, or Patchwork, and I just cannot get the pieces to fit. So, or when you're doing the dungeon crawl, there's these nasty creatures and you just don't have the spells in your hand to wipe them out. So you got these spells right here that you can use to try and bail you up too. And you're also keeping track of your own vigor, your mana supply, and hopefully not getting killed by the bad creatures before you manage to wipe out the dungeon. And that's that game.
So you're playing a character, right? Because you got a character sheet.
Right.
You're being the dungeon creator for the dungeon. You're lining up using the monsters you drafted.
Yep.
And then you're passing that challenge to someone else while receiving a challenge from someone else, not using your character and the creatures you originally drafted, because they're going to have spells that you can now use offensively.
Yeah, on the opposite
to go
end.
against the dungeon that someone else created.
Right,
Nice.
right.
I like it.
So you're building an arsenal at the same time that you're fortifying your dungeon. And you can really, really, really see the influence of Jamie Stegmaier in this design here, because it's like totally off topic from Tapestry, but all of these things are basically civilizations, right? And it's like each one of them is special in its own way. In this case, because it's a dungeon game, it's special in the sense of having a unique fortify spell and a unique crawl spell. Like this one is the dervish, and so those spells have something to do with shuffling. And then this one's the clairvoyant. Those have something to do with peeking through decks and trying to like guess the right thing from what's in there. And all of them are different and special. And then, the whole fitting of things into the space for grid coverage is definitely, mechanically related, shares some DNA to Tapestry. So I love Stonemaier games, and they inspire me no matter what I'm working on. I'm thinking about, like, what have I learned from Jamie's videos and from his games that helps me to be a better designer.
So as I think about this game and what you've done here, I can think back to my teenage years of playing when I was first learning to play Dungeons and Dragons, and we would almost do something similar where I would create a dungeon, or we draw on a little graph paper. You draw a dungeon, you throw monsters in it, and then the guy tries to fight it and do the same thing back and forth. So it's kind of like, it's got a nostalgia, I think, built into it that you're tapping into, as far as anyone who's played Dungeons and Dragons or role playing games, and we've all built our dungeons and things like that when we were kids. Is that was that at all an inspiration for you at all, or is this?
Oh yeah,
okay.
Yeah, I mean, these days I really take to heart the idea that you want to think about your target audience before you sit down and design the game. And I designed these two games with the idea in mind that they're going to be played mostly by people in their 40s and 50s. I'm not saying I don't want a 20-year-old playing, but look at all of us here. We're getting old. We don't have time to sit around and play D&D every single week. When we do want to crawl a dungeon with friends, we want it to be really quick. Nobody wants to prepare a campaign in advance, right? So it has to be a DM-less adventure, but it has to feel different every time so people don't get bored. And then, this book right here, kind of segueing, this guy I designed, I was like, it originally was a card game. A publisher came to me and asked me to help fix up a card game. And the more I thought about it, I was like, this game really needs a story. And that took me back to my childhood. And, the things I don't like about choose your own adventure books, but also the things that I do like about them. And I tried to take what I really loved and put it into a book that would bring back a little bit of that joy of discovery as a kid, but also tap into some of, as mature gamers these days, we expect a certain level of agency in our games. We don't want to have just random things happening to us. So I brought that in also, so that it would be a satisfying experience.
Right. As much as I enjoyed Talisman in my youth, playing it today, I feel like I had no decisions to make other than move to a space, roll a die, see what happens.
Yeah.
So you're right. Agency is more important. But I was thinking about that today because I was watching Dice Tower's recent post or video. Dungeons, Dragons, and Dice Towers is the title of that new series, and it's them playing a role-playing game. And I recently shared how I took my son, my 12-year-old son, to Armada Games, and we played a series of role-playing games over a couple months. And then how I walked away from that thinking, that'll probably be the last time I do that. Because like you said, I need it to be quick. I need it to be concise. I got so many dungeon crawl board games that can have an AI run the baddies for you, and you can just get in and jump in and enjoy it.
Right.
It's funny. I was thinking about the same topic today.
Yeah, I wanted something a little more lightweight than having to run an AI, like in Gloomhaven or something like that. I wanted to make it even less overhead than that.
So where did you write the story yourself, or did you take submissions from other people and take ideas from that, or how did that all come together?
Well, I wrote the story myself. My company focuses on wee folk, little creatures. So the chief baddies in this are a particular type of wee folk, and I'm not going to spoiler that whole thing. But that really was like one big constraint and inspiration. I don't know what you guys think about this, but in my own creative work, having constraints drives creativity. Because otherwise it's like, oh, what am I going to do? What am I going to design? What's it going to be today? And then if it's like, no, it has to be this and it has to be this. Well, there's not a lot of stuff at the intersection. And my mind just like right into that. So then the other constraint was my own artistic skills are fair to middling. Doing good stuff still takes me a long time. Like doing a really nice scene illustration can easily take me a couple days still. And I knew I wanted to have lots of great illustrations. So we kind of settled on using some free artwork made available by Jason Glover. And so then I looked at his pictures, like what pictures did he have on offer on his website for people to just go ahead and use, of course, giving him credit. And based on those, then I was thinking about, okay, so in the context of these wee folk, I've got all of these pictures here. What kind of a story would account for these pictures and wee folk? And then that kind of eventually led me to develop the storyline and, the plot, the chief challenges and things like that. So like this. I mean, there's a skeleton and there's wee folk. So what are we doing here? And I'm not going to spoil it, but like this game was designed basically at the intersection of my company's focus and Jason's art. And then just to sort of like put two lines on a map. And then in terms of drilling deep and adding a lot of depth to the story actually occurs in the same world as this game. And it also occurs in the same world as this game. And actually it's the same world as the world of Nomadic Gardeners.
Right.
So in many ways, actually the plot of this ties into all those other games. And going forward, that'll continue to be the case, and the world will keep getting richer and richer and richer. And hopefully someday when I'm really old, I'll have my own Silmarillion, basically.
So what is the basic synopsis of the story without giving anything away? What's the 10,000 foot view there?
You awaken in a crypt, your past a haze, outwit magical adversaries, find a cure for a mysterious disease, rediscover your own identity, and defeat those who caused your unfortunate situation, or die trying. 13 unique endings where you live, dozens where you die, replay again and again. Structured as a branching narrative, what lies beneath invites you to direct the plot, but only, Mike, if you master a unique combination of dice mechanisms. Enjoy all the challenges of solo roleplay, buffing your character by gaining items that unlock new powers, classic skill checks rolling against thresholds to hit enemies, but also intellectual puzzles, manipulating dice using limited actions, and dexterity tests, which are optional. Flicking dice at specified targets. Finally,
Nice.
and when, not if, when you die, you can spend your experience points to boost your next character. Perhaps this time you'll survive.
All right.
Yeah.
I like the idea of discovering who you are, partly because of recently finishing a great novel. Andy Weir, I think is his name.
Oh, yeah.
Hail Mary Project.
Oh, great book, man.
My son
Great
just
book.
finished it, so I finally got to talk to him about it. It was so cool having him finally finish the book, and he and I just kind of, I got to just like vomit out everything I wanted to say for fear of spoiling stuff. But in general, Chris, I don't know if you've read the novel.
No, I just Googled it though, so I can read about it later.
Oh, it's great. The main character wakes up not knowing who they are, where they are, what's going on, and it's that exploration of figuring things out. Why am I here? Who am I? Where did I come from? What is my mission? What is my goal? So when you just throwing that in there really kind of pulls at me because of that recency of that read. Like that to me felt like such a cool idea, hook, plot, like just like being in somebody's head while they try to figure out who they are and look at the clues about what they do, right? As an example, he talked about how he tried to think about a distance between an object and another object, and it just kind of came out in feet. And he's like, so I must be from North America, right? Or because, you know, I'm thinking in feet, right? So just as an example. So my hope is that you kind of dove into that exploration of trying to figure out who you are in your Choose Your Own Adventure book.
Yeah, I've just sort of looked back on the Choose Your Own Adventure books that I had played in my youth. And incidentally, when I started rewriting this, redesigning the whole game as a book, I went to my local library and I checked out every single Choose Your Own Adventure book I could get my hands on. And I read them until my eyes bled because, like, they're kids' books and there's no agency. And I was like, and at that point right there, it was like, that's when you think game design is not a hobby, it's a job. And I kept on reading it and I'm like, this just sucks. But anyway, but it reminded me there are some things about Choose Your Own Adventure books that I really, really loved and I can still appreciate to this day. And one of them is the sense of discovery. Because you don't really know the world that you're inside of in many of these books. And like there's this one, like you're inside of this, you get miniaturized and you go down to do some sort of a rescue mission among the ant people. And I'm like, what the heck? I'm an ant person. I'm an ant-sized person now. And I'm wandering around and these ants are doing these things to me. And I'm like, this is just so bizarre. But there's still that sense of discovery that makes you want to turn to the next page. And that was a really inspirational thing. I don't know if I'm going to do sequels to this book. It really depends on how many copies sell, whether or not it seems like it's really resonating with people. But if I do, I think I might try to have a similar sense of self-discovery in all of the books. It won't just be the same character, but it'll be other different characters. Like the one that I'm really interested in doing next is you are a golem. And you belong to the dwarfs. And one day you become self-aware, but you're not actually fully a person. So in this world, there are 6 main peoples, and there isn't a golem people. And you want to be a person. So you have to go through this process of self-discovery and figure out like which creature was used to pattern you. And then as you do that, you'll discover actually that some bad karma came along with it. That's a recurring theme throughout most of the games that I design is karma. All the actions that you take on the world are also actions on your own character. And it wouldn't be Fervent Workshop if I didn't at least reflect that in the games that I design. So all these characters have some dark backstory to them.
Cool.
Sorry, I had to drop out there for a quick second, but yeah, I think going back to I did a ton of Choose Your Own Adventure books as a kid, and the one complaint I would have him is you go to you're dead, go back, right? Oh, you're dead, go back, and so you mentioned earlier that there's gonna be some dice rolling and some other aspects of it, so it's less deterministic, and you can maybe survive a page that would normally be you're dead, go back and start over, and then continue on. Is that sort of what I'm understanding? Awesome.
Yeah, so there's a couple things like that. I have to pick one that's not too spoilery. So here we've got each of these is each page is called an encounter, and it's similar to.
You could just send us the book. I mean, that's an option too.
Didn't I send you the PDF? Anyway. So encounter 5, you come to a split in some tunnels right here.
If you haven't sent the PDF, then we'll talk after the show because I'm like peaked.
Okay. So yeah, do you want to go down the left tunnel or the right tunnel? Now, if this was an old Bantam choose your own adventure, it's basically a coin toss. You have no information. How are you supposed to know?
What do you want? Door 1, 2, or
I'll tell you what
3?
I would do. I'd stick my finger in the page. I'd go to the one page, read it, and then come back and then go to the other page and read it.
Well, okay.
As a kid, that's what I would do.
There's actually a magic item that lets you do that. It's the gnomic scope of foresight. And if you can find it, then you're allowed to do that. But anyway, so right here, though, before you make that choice, you can attempt a wit test to decipher the runes printed at the top of those arches. And if you succeed, you get to go to page 33. Now, page 33 is going to tell you a little bit of information about those 2 tunnels, so you can make a wiser decision. But it'll also,
I like that.
It also gives you this thing here called a ward tag. A ward is basically good luck. In this case, it is gnomish script with a rhyming chant to ward off danger. But, mechanically, it's a ward tag. And those ward tags are going to come in handy later on to help buff your character. So even when you replay this game, because you died and now you go back to the start, or you won and you want to try to get one of the other different endings, there's 4 major categories of endings and an achievement sheet where you can try to get all the endings. But anyway, you're going to come back to that same tunnel, and now oh, I want the left tunnel, or oh, I want the right tunnel. You still want to do that wit test. Because if you succeed at the wit test, not only do you get the information you already knew, but you get that ward tag, which will buff you against danger later on. And there are lots and lots of places in this book where ward tags will come in handy. So anyway, that's kind of like the essence of how this is different from a choose your own adventure book. That you have agency, but in order to exert that agency, you have to succeed at dice tests. And those dice tests are linked to the capabilities of your character. So there's 6 main character classes.
Nice.
No, I like that. That feels like perception. Like, if I'm good at my perception, I can find the secret tunnel,
right,
or the lock, right,
exactly.
Or the trap, so that I don't get hit. I don't think I've seen that in any choose adventure game that I've done. Now, I've also enjoyed. Oh man, what's the name of the company? They do the books. I wish Robert was here. He and I bought a few of these books.
Is it Goosebumps?
No, it's they're choose your own adventure, but it's the same company that does Final Girl.
Oh, with the picture books.
Geez, why is it not coming to me?
I know, but I've bought books from them. They have a Sherlock Holmes one. They have a Taken style, like Girls Been Kidnapped. Wayne's muted.
Van
Ryder Games.
Van Ryder, yeah.
And I've done their choose your own adventure books.
Those seem good to me. I'm not.
They are, but they're
I'm
not
going to bash them.
Oh, I would, but they're not. They're gamey, but not gamey like this. They're not like. They're more of. Do you spot a thing in the image?
Yeah, those are the image
You
books.
see the hidden number.
Right.
So it's more like a spot it type game.
Mm-hmm.
So I was like, okay, this was okay. But the idea of, give me tests, let me roll some dice to kind of see how my abilities do, dictating the storyline. That to me adds more narrative and arc. So I'm going to remember that adventure later. Like, oh, remember I couldn't even spot the stupid door in front of me. Like it was an easy test and I failed it. How blind was I? Yeah, you got me excited a little bit on this one.
Well, you may have been playing the Berserker, who doesn't have a very high wit attribute. So, on the other hand, I wouldn't want to get in his way.
So you play different characters too?
Yeah.
So you have options at the start of it to play different characters?
So at the beginning, you roll 2 dice, and if they come up the same, then you re-roll one of them until you have 2 different choices. And then you look at the table of classes, and you choose one of the 2 choices that you rolled. Then you fill in your character sheet, which includes the class, the basic attributes of that character class. And that's it. You don't even fill in your name. You get your name as a result of your self-discovery.
I like that.
Nice.
That's how I play Blood Bowl. I do
Oh.
fantasy football, and normally you have a roster of all of your players. These are fantasy like elves and goblins
Yeah.
and dwarves,
Yeah, I know.
and you're supposed to name them all before the season starts. But I don't name any one of them. Each one of them gets a name depending on how they do on the pitch. So
That
if
sounds good.
one player knocks out another player, and depending on who the player was or what happened, they might get a cool name like
Right.
TKO or
Skullraker.
right neck breaker.
Yeah.
But it
I
is
love that. That's a
9:30.
great idea.
I don't want to miss the folks at home. 9:30 is when we open up the phone lines. The phone lines will be open right now, 813-618-7099. For you folks at home, if you want to take over the show, all you got to do is call in. The show becomes yours for 10 minutes, and then you can tell us about what you got going on or join in our conversation on what we got going on. But we are here with Chris Scaffidi of Fervent Workshop talking about his current Kickstarter that's on Kickstarter right now, Dungeon Crawler Combo. See, the combo is because it's two and possibly three. Two games that you can pick up on there and possibly three because you can add cart shift.
Yeah.
Did I get that right? Did I say that right?
Cartref.
English is not my first
Not
language.
the first language. Yeah.
Well, so you can be excused.
Well,
Neither
Chris,
is, Nordic myths.
I am backer 118. So.
Oh, great. Thank you so much, Mike.
Absolutely, man. You got me intrigued on that book.
Thank you, caller. I appreciate your commitment and support.
We got a comment in here from Chester Wilson. Well, first he said, "We folk?" ? Exclamation! That is Chris's shtick. Like
That's
from
my shtick.
the day that we met him, and I still remember that first time we had you on. You were talking about the first GNOME game that you were doing with that publisher that you were working with, and I remember we got a phone call from one of the Blood Bowl guys, who happened to be someone who was in love with Nordic myth. Like you guys went back and forth talking about like the Nordic gnomes and the history of it.
Yeah.
And I was just mind blown that I wasn't the only one, that you weren't the only one in the world that was interested in this topic. We folk is this thing. He says, Chester says, I've read one Choose Your Own Adventure book. The title was My Teacher is from Outer Space.
Maybe your teacher was.
And I think, Chris, you hit the nail on the head. The Choose Your Own Adventure games did let you explore all kinds of worlds, all kinds of different themes. It put us kids in places that we never would have imagined. I remember it opened my eyes to fantasy gaming.
Yeah.
Because even before like D&D was introduced to me, I remember finding these books. You're an elf and you're in this land and you meet this person. They ask you for gold. Do you give them gold or do you shove off? Tell them good times.
Yeah, really good times. I feel in many ways like books like that really like drew the reader into the story because it's written in second person. It's not a story about what I did in the first person or third person. It's some random person neither of us actually even knows, but it's about what you did. And I think it's really nice for teaching kids to immerse themselves in an imaginary world. And it isn't just fantasy. I mean, just like they have space stories, old Western stories, spy stories. And it's that sort of it's like that sort of a feel that companies like Stonemaier thrive on. Because like you go to the Stonemaier website, and their tagline literally is, "What world will you explore today?" And that's really what all those books were about, is like immersing yourself and becoming part of another world. And other companies do it well too. I just pick on Stonemaier because they're just so blatantly explicit about it. We're going to take you to a different world today.
Here's Edmund England out of Sweden. Right? I got that right, Wayne? Sweden?
I think so.
I mess it up every time. International travel is not my first language. Edmund says, interesting to hear about the game. My mother introduced Choose Your Own Adventure books. I think it was before I played an RPG. So that's kind of how I feel. Like it was even before I got into RPG, Choose Your Own Adventure was introduced to me. You're touching on a topic that there's a thread here among a lot of gamers, I think. This, pick up one of these books in the library. Scholastics. You remember those days? The Scholastic Book Fair days?
Book Fair.
Oh, yeah.
Oh, man. Good time.
They still have
remember
them too.
They still have it. Yeah.
Yeah. Oh, you got it right there, Carlos. There you go.
You got it right. Yep. I think
I was
that's.
gonna
Go ahead, Mike. Go.
No, I was just going to say that I remember when I was a kid that there was this, it wasn't necessarily choose your own adventure, but there was a book, and I wish I could figure out what it was. I'm sure it would be nothing major, us being older now, but I just remember there being this whole hit point system, and it wasn't like anything with dice and I know there are other books out there that have been doing this for eons, but I just remember as a kid, like thinking that was the coolest book. And I didn't care how many times I went through it. I would keep pushing my luck, on this way or that way. And I just love stuff like that, where you can just kind of get lost in it. And, like you said, it kind of takes you to your own little world and play in.
Also takes all of us who are old enough to remember it back to a time when the world was simpler and safer.
Right. Yeah.
It hasn't been that way for 2 decades, and it's kind of sad.
Yes. I want to put a
Good,
copy
Wayne.
of this in my kid's hand.
No, I think Mike, you hit the nail on the head. It's a lot of us grew up with choose your own adventure books. They were very popular. I think there was actually a choose your own adventure game came out a couple of years ago, and it was like not a very overly produced game. It was very simple. It was like it's like a murder mystery thing in a mansion, and it was super. We loved it. It hit that nostalgia of my game group, and we dug it. Played the whole game in like 2 sittings. And I like the idea of a game that you can reset it and go a different way. And have a different path through that adventure by just making some different choices initially, so I like that idea. And I do like the concept that it's just not deterministic. It's not, you flip to a page, you're dead. There's you can keep building on it. You make a mistake, or maybe you don't make you make a suboptimal route, but you're still able to kind of push through and persevere is a good option. So I like that.
Yeah, I played that mansion game. It's a co-op, so we played it in a group, and it was fun.
Yep.
One of the things I wanted to be different about this game compared to that game is the mechanics should be thematic. It's not just the same random test for each of the different types. So when you're using your wits, that wit attribute, the dice test is a challenge of your wits. Basically, you roll the dice, and then you have to do something with them. It's like a set of rules, but it's not random at that point. There's a random puzzle, and you have to use your brain, limited by the wit of your character, the number of actions, wit actions your character is allowed to manipulate those dice. And then when it's a dexterity test, like the first dexterity test in the book, you're trying to retrieve a key that's kind of snagged between some rocks. So the dice test for that is a dexterity test, which is related to flicking dice. And then when you're just trying to hit, that one is more like a traditional roll a number at least above a certain height, or like a certain number. And so that one is purely random. But the dexterity test is purely deterministic in the sense that there's no luck. Either you snap that die against it or you don't succeed. I mean, it's up to you in terms of your skill. There's no luck involved in that at all. So one's totally non-deterministic, one's totally deterministic. And then that wit one is kind of in between. It's non-deterministic in the sense that it's like a random puzzle. But from there on, it's all you, baby. You have to figure it out. And it's not random. It's based on if you're smart enough to do it. Both you and your character.
Nice.
I found the link to the PDF. You put it in the call-in show channel of the Discord. So
Yes, sir.
you did upload it there. So you folks at home that want to get a taste of it, you can find the downloadable preview. The link is in our Discord channel under the call-in show discussion.
Yeah. Everybody
So now
should be a member of your Discord channel anyway, because you always post interesting things there when we're between shows.
That's true. It's a good call. Now the book, the Kickstarter, I haven't had a chance to fully look through the thing. It comes as a book. You're making an assumption that people have the dice. Is it all D6s? Is it various? Do people need the D20 or D12 or anything like that? Or
You need 6 D6s.
okay,
Yeah.
something
I
that
got
most people
mine-
should have in their house. Yeah.
Well, I got my pack from the dollar store for $1.
There you
$1.25 store now, I think.
Sadly, that's
go. Sadly,
another thing that's changed since my childhood. Broken, and we'll never get it back.
No, but I think that's it. That's a cool point though, because you go back to like the Steve Jackson games and cheap ass games and things like that in the past. Like, there are certain things that if you're any kind of a gamer, you have available in your house, right? You should have. I would doubt that probably almost nobody that would call into the show or is in a Discord channel couldn't come up with 66 in their house.
Yeah,
and you'll also need war games and.
You'll also need a pencil that still has eraser on the end of it. And if you don't have that, let me know and I'll PayPal you 10 cents so you can go buy it.
So many pencils in my house is ridiculous. My kid goes through I don't know how he goes through as many pencils as they go through, but 9-year-olds go through a lot of pencils in school, I guess.
Yeah,
you can buy them. It's kind of sad. You can buy them pre-sharpened now, like on Amazon. Like I went to buy his school supplies on Amazon, and they needed 2 boxes of Ticonderoga No. 2 pencils, and then it was an option of sharpened or unsharpened or pre-sharpened. And I'm like, there's a whole. I remember having to sit there before the first day of school sharpening all your pencils, but now you can just buy everybody sharpened.
No, I waited until I showed up in class where they had the electric sharpener, so I could sit there for 5 minutes in the back of the room with that machine running nonstop, with the teacher looking at me like I'm a horrible human being.
I grew up with the crank on the wall, and
crank on
you had
the wall.
the thing.
You get your knuckles every 10th turn.
I still have
We're
one
showing our
in my
age.
house. I used it this
Definitely
morning.
showing our age today.
Yeah, I was this year old, man. But
now let's talk a little bit about the production issues that you had. You talked about some production difficulties or challenges. How did you describe it?
Okay, so these are dry erase mats, right, for this game. And unless the people who back a Kickstarter go and tell all their friends and their friends' friends, and lots and lots and lots and lots and lots of people back the Kickstarter, there's not going to be more than 50 or 100 people who back the game, which is not nearly enough to hit the economies of scale that you get with major manufacturer or major publishers, who will just order 2,000 copies at a time. And that's mostly because it's kind of a strategic thing. I don't want to be focusing on marketing right now. I'd rather just be creating things that people can enjoy. So as a result, I had to really shop around in order to find ways to assemble this game. And the other thing I did is I kind of wanted to get to a sort of standard box size that most of my games can be. So this is about what I'd like. And you can see that these line up perfectly. And a big part of that is because I'm thinking next year, for reasons associated with the Christmas Gnome game, I may want to be able to priority ship boxes. And
that would fit right in that.
It's exactly the right size to fit in the USPS priority mail. So that if somebody wants to order the Christmas Gnome game and have it, hot in their USPS mailbox by Christmas, then I can just do that. And so that was one of the constraints on the size of this. And so this is a custom box size, and that also imposed another additional constraint. So it's been a real process of hunting to find. So there's certain cards that you can get where you can dry erase them, and that works. But the dry eraser, depending on the solvent inside of it, slowly erodes the dry erase surface.
Oh.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and
so
I'm not going to
just buy any UV coated card.
It may be, but there are I've heard about certain products from some manufacturers that I'm not going to talk about. I'm not going to badmouth them on the air, but I was warned away from just taking the obvious choices because my players may start complaining to me after just a few games that the dry erase isn't working like it used to. So, I've been really, really hunting around. I got a quote from one manufacturer a few weeks ago who said they were going to use one particular surface finish on the cards, the mats. And then I'm getting quotes from other manufacturers, and they're telling me that they're going to use this other different type of finish. And I was like, this is weird. So then I wrote back to the first manufacturer, and I said, hey, everybody else is telling me that they would rather use this finish. So do you have examples of games where you did a dry erase with that other finish? Because I'm thinking to myself, I'm going to go and research, did people previously complain online about the quality of the dry erase.
And if there's anything about gamers, as you can count, we will
know.
complain online.
I want to
There
find
will be a
out.
data trail.
That's right. Like, I mean, this is really serious. Even if only 50 people get a copy of my game, I want every one of them to have a wonderful experience and not have crap 6 months from now because their markers are destroying their mats. So then, yeah, I got to reply back after only like 15 minutes. Oh yeah, we should have said we were going to use that other finish, and we'll do it for you for the same price. And I was like, that was just another strike against you. I don't think I'm necessarily going to hire that company. So, yeah, this is a huge, huge, huge difference between being the designer and being the publisher. And when you're doing both, you kind of have to pay attention to both sides. You can't just have a game that's mechanically elegant, because if that's as far as you take it, then the players are still going to possibly have a bad experience due to the physicality of the components. And so there's a lot of other things that go into making a great game besides having a great design.
So I think of your game, and I think of one of Mike's and my favorite flip and fills, gold, silver and gold.
Oh, I've heard of it. I've never played it.
Oh, you got to play it. You talk about the dungeon crawler filling with the polyomino shapes. You were describing it, and that's all I can think of was silver and gold. You're a pirate, and you're exploring islands, and there are 8 cards? 9. I think 9 cards with 9 different shapes, but you only draw 8 in a round, or it could be 8. It don't matter. There's always one less than there, and so each round you're going to flip all but one of these shapes, and you need to try to fill all your islands to explore them in order to gain points for them. So you're really working to fill it in, but it's they're cards, and you're using dry erase markers to fill them in. I played it a lot, and I have noticed that it's kind of a haze now on it, like a black marker haze, where it really hasn't erased like it used to. I think the more we shuffle these cards, the more we use them. And I distinctly remember Jimmy Stegmaier talking about this with Rolling Realms, like this struggle of finding the right finish for Rolling Realms, his flip and fill game or roll and write game.
Yeah, I don't know that there's a perfect solution, simply because these things rub against one another, and like you said, they abrade the finish. But at least you don't want the pens to be dissolving the finish. It's kind of unavoidable that friction is going to exist in the world, but you don't necessarily have to use incompatible chemicals if you pay attention. Yeah, I think it was brilliant what they did with Rolling Realms. Those are actually little pieces of plastic. They printed onto plastic to make Rolling Realms.
So it's not paper cards, it's plastic?
Yeah, it is. Yeah. And I looked into doing the same, but it would have been too expensive with only 50 backers. If everybody out there wants to go and convince all their friends and we get 1,000 backers, I promise you I will go and make beautiful cards, made out of plastic, just like...
Oh, all right.
But, that's not the world we live in.
Now, talk to me about the difference between producing a game, right? And yes, you already, you said it. The adventure book is a game. It is a game, but it's a book. So it's a whole different production process. And I was in the printing industry for a while before I got into insurance, or insurance got into me. Talk to me about, is it easier? Is it harder? I kind of have an idea, but tell the folks at home the difference between producing a book versus producing a game.
Well, yeah, there's definite differences. One thing about producing the book is that I can't or don't just print it off at home, and now I have a physical copy that I can use for playtesting. And it's also not something that I would put into TTS, really. But it's a hyperlinked PDF, so I can just send it out and people can play it in their browser too. So it's a wholly different way of playtesting compared to playtesting most games, which I would normally do with physical components or TTS. As far as the production aspect of it, it's nice not to have to worry about interior color. So a lot of things related to that aspect are simpler.
We got a caller on the line here.
Oh, yeah.
One of our regulars. Hello there.
Good evening, folks.
Ron
Hey, Ron.
Frazier from Hotlanta.
Ron.
Yeah. How's everybody doing?
Good. How are
we're
you doing,
talking
Ron?
about a set of games that I think would be right up your alley. I don't know if you were with us from the beginning. We got Chris Scaffidi of Fervent Workshop talking about his current Kickstarter. What'd you hear so far?
So I've been in and out on the conversation this evening. I understand that the game is very closely related to Choose Your Own Adventure. So you got some dice rolling in it and what have you, which sounds like something that's up my alley as well. But I didn't catch all of the detail. However, one of the things I wanted to say is that that Chris, whenever you come on, I really appreciate your discussion because you get deep into your insights and not only just your game design, but the production, the manufacture, and all of that stuff. And I think it's really interesting.
Thanks, Ron. I appreciate
a whole
it.
lot of that.
I like how when you call in, you tell about your experiences with stuff too. So it's sort of like it's the opposite side of the coin. Because we're trying to make some nice things, and then Ron calls in and he tells us did he experience a nice thing or not in this situation. So I really appreciate that a lot.
Thank you. So at first I wasn't gonna call in because I was not going to call in because
Do they charge you money every time you call in?
Blasphemy.
No, I usually don't. Well,
They should be paying
I was
you.
kind of at a loss for that. That would be nice.
Well, when I get paid, then we'll talk.
Sorry, Ron, go on and table here.
But that is beside the point. I am. All right, so here's a situation that I'm potentially dealing with on Saturday. I'm hosting board game night at my place, and hopefully this time nobody gets sick.
That'd be
between
good.
now and then, right? So that you can actually have because that happened the past couple of times I've attempted. So it's been a few months between that and conventions and what have you. So I have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 people that I know of, at least, maybe 6, maybe 7, coming over Saturday to play. My group of guys are called the usual suspects. There's 3 guys, and so I'm like, perfect. We'll play Dune Imperium. I'll teach them Dune Imperium because I got that in the 2 expansions. But then then somebody else said, I'm definitely coming. And then now, you guys know Frenchie lives here in the Atlanta area. He lives on the other side of town of me. But he's here. And so looks like he's going to come too. So that gives me more than 4 players.
Ugh.
So I'm trying to figure out what I'm going to do because I want to play because I invited people. I feel strongly that I should play host, and the play host, I can teach Dune Imperium, particularly when I refresh my mind with a quick read of the rules and watching some videos and what have you because I played it a couple of times. But I was like, hey guys, listen, even if I don't get a chance to play, I want you guys to play the game and everything like that. So yeah, it's just one of those situations,
I've done that, period, flat out. And I think I talk about that a lot on this show. that like anything over 4, it starts to get wonky with game decisions. When we're at it's many times when we've been at 5 players, I've been like, hey guys, this is my house. I got, y'all play this 4-player game that's awesome, and I'll be here, kind of the umpire if needed, the host hanging out, watching the story, because I'd rather those 4 people play one really good game, and it's hard to find good 5-player games, period.
Actually, what you could do is get a game that up to 6 people can play. And everybody takes their turn simultaneously, so there's relatively little dead time. And you're not waiting, just scarfing down nachos while Julio over there is taking his turn, and then Samantha's going to take her turn, and it's getting really late, and you told your wife you'd be home, and you're not yet. Certain games don't do that to you. You should check them out.
Achievement on the sales. I like it.
Like I said, I designed it for people like us who we like dungeon crawlers, but we don't have a lot of time to sit there and, yada, 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 yada. It has to be efficient. And, if you can get 6 people together, that's actually something that you should be able to celebrate, right? And enjoy it and not feel like you're suffering through it.
Right. Yeah. Hey, so do you have a game in mind, Chris?
I do. I would recommend Dungeon Maker Deluxe. It won't help you by Saturday because I don't have very many copies of the prototype, and I don't think shipping is that fast. But if you back the campaign, then you'll have a game in your arsenal for situations like this in the future.
Mike, any 6-player games that you could recommend that might be able to work by Saturday?
Well, what kind of games do you guys prefer?
Well, I'll tell you this. I have Atlantis Rising, but we've already played that, and I want to do something. I want to do something else with the guys.
Have you done Seven Wonders yet?
We played. Yeah. Yes, we have played Seven Wonders.
Yeah.
So it might come down to that, but it sounds like if everybody shows up that says that they're showing up, I might be able to pull out have those four guys play the Dune Imperium, and then we have another 2 or 3-player game or something. So that's not a bad thing.
Yeah, I'd rather have 2 tables, one of 4 and one of either 2-player or 3-player, than one big large game that takes too long.
Yeah, that's how I feel. There aren't too many games that play at that player count that don't take too long. Atlantis Rising is one of them. Man, I really wish I had Captain Sonar.
Oh gosh, that would be awesome. 6-player game with Captain Sonar.
Yeah.
So how many players do you have total?
Looks like we're going to have 6 or 7. And the 7th person will be if we have 7, that 7th person is completely a casual, not necessarily casual.
Filthy casual. A filthy casual.
All right.
How about Citadels?
Scythe out of there.
How about good old Citadels from 2000?
Hit and roll. Hit and roll. Drafting, is it?
Yeah, it's got drafting on up to 8 players to keep the game moving, even with large player count. Citadels.
I played a lot of that back in the day, man. We're
It's
talking
an old game.
20 years ago back in the day.
Yeah, that's an old one.
There's always this Escape from the Aliens in Outer Space. That's a good one. That's a hidden movement game, hidden role game. It'll satisfy newbies as well as seasoned players.
Oh, how about Steampunk Rally? It's kind of a bizarre game, but it plays up to 8 people, and it also uses closed drafting.
Yeah. Wait, I have Heat. I have Heat pedal to the metal.
6.
Oh, yeah.
There's
you go.
6. And I played more Heat this week. Again, I keep playing Heat. Keeps showing up on my table.
It's also Thunder Alley.
We play a lot of Between Two Castles.
Yeah. Quick story about Heat. I wanted to share about it. So Atlanta Game Fest was last weekend, and I believe it wasn't last weekend. Whatever it was. It was in the recent past here, and it was last weekend. I went up. So I went there, and on Saturday, Me for Madness, one of my friendly local game stores, gave me a call and let me know that my copy of Heat had arrived, and they had said something about that. They had gotten in, they had an extra copy. I'm like, okay, all right, I'll go. And I'm like, I'll pick it up later. So I ended up playing Burkle, it was, with some folks, and I said, actually, I think I'm actually going to leave a little bit early. I'm going to drive up to my store and pick up Heat. And the lady's like, we're trying to get our hands on that game for months and blah, 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 blah. And I recalled that they mentioned that they had one copy on the shelf. So I called the store and asked them if they still had that copy. They said yes. So instead of getting my own copy, I drove up to the store, got my copy and the extra copy, brought it back, and gave it to those people. I mean, they paid me for it, but like, you guys know how hard it's been to get a hold of that game.
Oh yeah.
So that was my little good deed for the day.
I mean, well, you didn't say how much you charged, right? Like, it may not have been a good deed.
Might have been a very, very good deed for his bank account.
They paid the cost for it, but like, the fact that it's been hard to get a hold of, I felt like, I'd do my fellow gamer a favor and, get that copy for them. So,
And no additional handling fees?
No additional handling fees.
Okay, good deed. We'll agree. Good deed. Nick Oben in the chat says, coming in late to the convo, but does Memoir 44 Overlord fit? And I've taught Overlord quite a few times. It's one of my favorite ways to play Memoir 44. It's either anywhere between 4 players to 8 players can play Overlord. You can do it even 2-player, but it's best at 8. Does play at 6. But I was the game that I was gonna answer with, Ron, is my latest favorite 6-player game. It is Quartermaster General World War II, which is a 3v3 game by Ian Brody.
Ian Brody. Yep, Ian Brody.
Same guy that did one of your favorites right now.
Wuthering the card game.
Yep, same guy. So I hear a lot of the things you feel in the War of the Ring card game were inspired by his designs of his series of Quartermaster General games, because he's got them in different player sets, like 2-player, 4-player, 6-player, and they're team games. They're straight up team games. One playing Axis, one playing Allies, and you're playing 3v3, and it's all card based, and it's super simple in the rule set, which really allows you to dive into the game play and enjoy the team aspect, where, like, even a small nation state like Italy, which Dan played, our friend Dan from Your Turn played as Italy, which has the smallest deck, really doesn't have a lot of army units or navy units to throw out there. A lot of their cards are support. So you get to kind of play different roles on your team, either like, the tank or the supporter. And it's so much fun to play. I know that Odak, Jim Odak in our chat, will probably jump in when he hears this. He's been picking up like every single one of these titles that he can. So Quartermaster General is my final answer for 6-player games. Mike, I didn't hear your final answer.
Mine was Escape from the Aliens in Outer Space.
That was the one.
Yeah.
There you go, Ron Fraser. 6-player games for Saturday. You can pick up the Kickstarter that Chris has going on right now and just tell him about it. There's your 6-player game there. Or what Mike shared or I shared, and I think that'll make for a good Saturday. But I also say Heat. Like, I'm really digging Heat right now.
especially if you already have it.
Yeah, yeah. Although I will have to say one last thing. So one of our other stores, Level Up Duluth, just had they just had a little flea market, and somebody was selling Memoir 44, and I passed on it. And had I had this conversation prior to that, I might have it now.
And it's probably
But oh well.
cheap. It's probably you probably could have got it for a decent price. I know that in the aftermarket, they're pretty inexpensive. Like I picked up copies for like $25.
Yeah.
I keep buying them. I can't. This whole behind this camera right here, this camera here is a 4x4 shelf, and it's all Memoir 44 stuff and extra copies just in case I ever lose like a little tank. You know, I can go into there and pluck it out.
just in case.
Never know. You never know. And I got to see Richard Borg, the designer, last month when I went to Huracan. So every time I go to the historical conventions, he's still there. He's still signing any copy I buy. It's a wonderful human being. It was his design. The command and color system was all done by him, Richard Borg. So I'm actually looking right now at here's Memoir 44 on my table in like a little corner, like the opening scenario. Like I always have it ready to go because it's just the easiest one to set up and play with my kids. So Memoir 44, great title.
I agree.
Appreciate you calling in, man.
No problem. I'm going to hang up and listen. You guys take it easy.
Take care.
Thanks, Ron.
All right, Ron. See ya.
Ron Fraser from Hotlanta calling in. Phone lines open back up. We got some comments in the chat. Let's pop in and check those out. In the chat, we've got from New Hampshire. Matt Harris pops in and says, "What's up, fellas? Beautiful night up here in New Hampshire." Wicked, right? That's their word? Is that the word they use? Wicked? They say that a lot. Chad Stilson in the chat. Hey. I'm trying to decide which two-player dueling game to dive into. Do you guys prefer Unmatched system or the Dice Throne system? Any feelings from the three of us?
Well, I haven't played the Unmatched system. I thought Dice Throne was fine. I think I would want to try something new myself. So if I were me, I would choose Unmatched for sure.
You want to try something new. We'll come back to that. On the line, Nick Oben. Say hi, Nick Oben.
Hello and happy Thursday, gentlemen. This is Nick from Wesley Chapel. Oh, you knew that.
I have caller ID.
And you took the wind right out of your sails before you even got started, man.
I'm sorry. We can try it again. You can hang up, call back. I'll pretend like I don't even know who you are.
Don't threaten me with a good time. No, I'll miss my chance. I know you got people trying to call in all night.
My man.
No, happy Thursday. I apologize for missing the show last week. Actually, crappy week for me to miss. Axe throwing went late, but I know you've got Chris on the line. Hello and good evening, Chris. How are you?
Hi, how you doing? I understand that it's what is Wesley Chapel? What is that?
That is the name of a lovely suburb of Tampa.
Oh, okay.
Basically, in the same area as Carlos in general,
Right.
just another suburb. But yeah, Wesley Chapel.
Yeah, I didn't know that. Okay, thank you. Well, nice to meet you.
And you, sir, yeah, I'm checking out the Dungeon Crawler Combo Kickstarter. The link is in the chat for those listening in and watching,
Great.
Nice.
Looks cool. Congrats on making the goal, by the way. I see that. It looks like just crossed over, so cool, man. Very cool.
Yeah, very exciting. Thank you.
Well, is this, I feel like we've seen your name before. This is not your first crowdfund project. Is that right?
No, the first one I did was last April or May, I think. Maybe later in the summer. For a small two-person card game. Well, solo or two-person. I like to create a solo mode for all my games. So anyway, solo or two-person. And then I did a print and play Kickstarter for this game, Carturiff, which is available in boxed form from this Kickstarter. And I've contributed to quite a few, not my own Kickstarters, but other Kickstarters that people have needed help with. So I haven't necessarily been a designer on those projects in all cases.
No, that's great. I actually got in deep enough into the Kickstarter community, content creator community, to like realize that it was way harder than I was hoping it was going to be.
Oh, to be a Kickstarter creator?
As far as launching a project and actually doing it successfully, and figuring out, do you need to do marketing, and how do you build your brand and build your audience, and then what do you actually need, what kind of relationships do you need to have in place when, and all that. I think a lot of people out there have neat ideas for games, and it feels so approachable because anyone could just go for it on a Kickstarter, right? And if it doesn't work out, it doesn't work out. Although you're out time and money, there's energy you put into a Kickstarter, whether it succeeds or not. But it does feel like it's approachable. But then I went to go do it, and it was like, oh, this is like a part-time job. This is a thing. So is that how you found it, or now that you know the system and you're in, is it kind of like, oh yeah, I know how to do that, so for my 5th project, I'll just jump right in, no problem?
Well, marketing is always the hardest part of any project because there's lots and lots of things pulling on people's attention. So my response to that has always been to plan as if a small number of people are going to be interested, 50 or 100 or something like that, maybe 200. And then if more get involved and they're really excited about it, then that's so much the better. But just sort of not planning to hit it big, like not setting that as a goal, makes everything so much more approachable. I actually think I have this whole big philosophical issue with how everything has been getting monetized. And it isn't just games, but there was a time when people, for instance, made friendship bracelets and they gave it to people, and it was just a gift. People would make jewelry, they would make art and give it to one another. They would make Christmas wreaths for one another and give it to their friends. So maybe they would knit things for their friends and family and just give it. But in the past, I'd say 15 years or so, there's really been an expectation that if you're a crafter, that you have an Etsy, and therefore that you're doing this for money. And it genuinely saddens me when I talk to people who want to make a game, and I ask them, do they plan to sell it? Well, here's the thing that saddens me. They look at me as if there's no reason to create a game except to sell it. That's the sad part. As if there's no point to being a human unless if you're for sale. But creating is part of who we are as, intelligent creatures. This is one way that God distinguishes us from animals. You don't see animals going around designing games for one another. The fact that we create things is part of what makes us uniquely human. Like, we're always inventing stuff, or at least we're capable of doing it. Why would you only give that away in exchange for being paid money? Especially when we're talking about the amount of money that can be made as a game designer, which frankly for most of us is not much.
I think Tom Vassell says if you want to be a millionaire and design board games, you need to start off with $1 million, and then
start out with $2 million, and then at the end of it, you'll be a millionaire. No, but in all seriousness, it saddens me, and there is a joy to saying, I have this really great thing and I'm going to create it and share it with my friends and then refine it. And, if it ever gets to the point that they absolutely love it, I'll put it on Kickstarter. Maybe 100 people will want me to buy a copy and send it to them. And I can do that all because I, Chris, am passionate about making great experiences for people. It's not because I want to make money. It's because I find a sense of fulfillment in creating good things. So I think if you kind of can adopt that, sorry, I've talked way too much, but if you can adopt that kind of emotional worldview, that you get your satisfaction from the intrinsic creation rather than how it's received commercially, then no matter how it turns out on Kickstarter, you've still won. You're still a winner, and you can walk on with your heart filled with joy as you dive into the next project.
Well said.
Yeah, that was great. That was great. I was waiting, Carlos, for the sound effects. That was it. Perfect.
That's just way too many words.
That's really good. I'll say certainly if I looked at a project, I never did have any delusions of it going viral and hitting a big money amount. It was really just it was more effort than I thought. And actually to that point, my son and I, mostly my son. So it's funny what you're talking about here is adults forget how fun it is to create and under the pressure of the idea that they should make money off of their creation, right? Because like kids create games with no sense of monetization every day, right? And that's like, it's like, to your point, it's a very distinctly human thing. And at some point we just consider our time to be valuable. And if you're going to spend time on something that you could make money on, then maybe you should do it that way, et cetera. But yeah, no, I like the idea a lot of having created something, and that's the point, right? And like you said, I like that. I actually was going to ask how you decided on the $4,000 pledge level, because that is smaller than a lot of projects out there, right? But I get it now, right? You're saying if I make 100 copies, man, that's amazing. If I make 50 copies, that's great. The point is you made the game, right?
If I get to that funding level, then I can afford to produce at an economy of scale that will make it affordable for everybody.
Cool. Very good. That's great. I see you on the Discord as well, so I might pick your brain. I mean, we've got a game that I would say the game is probably at an 80% level. We've been sitting on it actually for like a year now, without much more development. Really, just kind of it's sitting in a box, waiting for my son to care enough again to come back to it, or maybe I'll bring it out. And we did play it maybe a month ago, and kind of remember, oh yeah, it's a playable game. That's cool. We have one handmade copy of it here at the house called Ant Kingdoms. Carlos knows about it. Landis, my son, actually spoke with Jamie Stegmeyer on this show probably about a year ago at this point about the game, so it's kind of neat. But,
so is your son co-designing it with you?
Yeah, he was the primary, and I was the kind of sounding board and, hey, Dad, what do you think about this? And then certainly I would help him out. I just have more experience, but not necessarily better ideas, right? His ideas are great. I just happen to have more experience.
Practical.
At this point, we'll go with co-design, sure.
Well, Nick ran him through a boot camp. Last year, Nick ran his family through a game a day. So Nick joined us for his breakdown of game a day. So his boy got to play probably at least 5 out of every 6 days or 7 days out of the week, he was playing a game. So I'd imagine that boot camp alone would have changed his perspective on his design, having played so many different games and a lot of the same games over and over again. So coming back to that now, a year more mature and a year of boot camp, I bet there's going to be changes to that game.
Yeah, no, for sure. It's good. In fact, this conversation, that's what I think I need to do is talk more about it, talk to other people in the industry about it, remind myself, hey, it's a playable game. We should talk about it, and maybe even bring it to a game day or something. Do some play testing. But anyways, thank you, Chris. That was good stuff. I'm already past my 10 minutes, Carlos. You haven't kicked me off.
Hey, Nick, before you go,
we got Chris.
Go
ahead.
Well, I just wanted to say that there's a lot of kids out there who don't have a dad who's willing to take time to design something together, whether it's a game or anything else. So your son is very fortunate to have a dad like you. I
wish I had a
dad. He's a very fortunate young man.
Thank you very much. It's been fun for sure. And yes, the game a day last year, it was 7 out of 7 days a week. By the way, it was actually game a day, 365 consecutive days, January 1st to December 31st. If I was out of town, the boys would play. So I actually have 2 sons and a daughter. the boys and I were the ones doing the game a day. So the boys would just play a game of chess or Star Realms or some other heads-up game. But any day that I was here, which was most of them, then the three of us would play either before school, after school, whatever, just kind of fit a thing in. A lot of those were, a single hand of the crew, right? That would count. Like the point was we were at a table together every single day for a year doing some game, so it would range everything from literally 5 minutes, a single hand of the crew, up to pick your large full-size game that took 3 hours on a Saturday, and everything in between. So it was wild. It was wild. This is the Cliff Notes version of the podcast we did on it. My official recommendation is to not do that, by the way, after having done it.
I'd feel kind of bored if I didn't play a game every day, but maybe your mileage would differ.
Yeah. At around day probably 270, certainly by 300, it's officially a chore. And then now you've done the thing you're not supposed to do. You've taken your hobby and turned it into a chore, right? Which is another piece of that Kickstarter aspect, because I really, really do gravitate towards what you're saying there. Is I just like creating the game, sharing it with people, and having fun. And when all of a sudden it seemed like doing the Kickstarter was going to be work, then it was like, well, wait a minute, I don't know if I want to do that,
No, you don't have to do that. You don't have to.
Yeah.
Where were you a year ago?
What you were saying earlier,
reason.
remember it's playable, share it with lots of people, and maybe somebody else will say, hey, I want to put this on Kickstarter for you.
Yeah, there you go. we just get to be the designer. Good point.
Yeah,
all right. With time fleeting, I will point out I did not call in last week. I apologize for that. I did attend Sobo at this point a week and a half ago, right? And I'll just real quick, I'd be remiss if I didn't say it was a great time.
Southern Board Game Festival in Lafayette, Louisiana, at the University of Lafayette.
Yeah, and it was great. Learned a lot of new games from the team down there, kind of the local Louisiana folks. Jeremy.
Connor, Jay is amazing. He sat with us and taught us Arc Nova, all like 8 hours of that play of Arc Nova. He sat and taught that game. Yeah,
that sounds like a word that could be fun. We did what we did. We got in very first night, Friday night. He taught us Barcelona, which I had never even seen before, and ended up actually being probably the top three of the fest for me. I really enjoyed the action selection mechanic in there and how you're building out the city of Barcelona. And there's some history in there about why some streets are wide and some streets are narrow, and kind of a little bit of a point salad, which is always fun too. Like you have a couple of different goals you could go for. You want to do more buildings. You want to do more of the road. You want to get people on your bus or on your train or whatever it was. So it was a really, really neat game. And he promised he would lose that because he was teaching, and he did. So that was good. Rob ended up winning. He was a dead last. It was good. And then I'll do just two other highlights. Learned that allowed me to also give shout outs to those guys. Learned Merchants of the Dark Road, finally. So this is not a new game.
Was it Jeremy's blinged out copy?
With Jeremy's blinged out copy, taught by Connor. And that was great. And Connor, God bless him, he ran the session with 4 new players. So he was like the teacher coach, but he didn't even play the game and just hung out with us the whole time. It did take a little bit. I will say I attended multiple sessions like that, hosted playthroughs, right, where the teacher is then not playing the game. And in all cases, and I can see this happening now after the fact, the game I feel like took longer than it needed to because there was a coach sitting there, right? Oh, like, because they would ask people, myself included, we would ask, can I do this? Like, what would happen if I do this? And then, of course, they were trying to be nice and they would answer. So now everyone's turn, unless the player really knew what to do, it was almost like turn by committee some of the times. So, but it was fun. And I mean, we were there to learn the game and it made the learning play pretty full feature. I feel like I know the game now. We covered pretty much every aspect of it. So that was a lot of fun. I will say my takeaway from Merchants of the Dark Road, and you heard the change in my tone of my voice, is it's called Merchants of the Dark Road, and that is the road that you should take every time. I don't know if folks are not familiar, but generally it's a pick up and delivery game. You are picking up either items or people to deliver out to the towns out off the road. And when you do that delivery, you can either do the standard thing and take the dark road where you don't have lanterns and the reward, you have to kind of straight shot to where you're going. And the rewards are a little less, but you get there.
Safe.
Or you can take the light road, which you shouldn't do. Just don't do it. It made me mad. It made me mad.
I've found there's a huge hassle to even getting a good supply of lanterns.
Yes. Okay. So the thing. Thank you, Chris. We're taking the
It's a
light
hassle.
road,
I mean, seriously. Also, that you
Taking
can
the light
go and be set upon. I don't. I agree. I'm 100% with you. I always take the dark road too.
Yes. So taking the light road costs 3 lanterns, which is a not particularly easy resource to get. Now, in general, the lanterns aren't really used for much else. So if you stumble upon lanterns, which can happen, if you stumble upon lanterns and you have 3 of them, I could see that being kind of at least a zero-sum game, like, oh, no big deal. I have these, I may as well use them. Fine. But then the other players who join you on the trip, which is a mechanic I do like, every time you go down the road, dark or light, the other players can choose to join you or not and kind of like daisy chain their delivery. They get a smaller version of the delivery action, basically.
Well, depending on the role.
Than you do. Depending on the role, indeed. So
sometimes they get a better reward
road,
than you do.
On the light road, they do. On the light road, and they absolutely do. On the dark road, you roll the dice and you get the first pick of the result. So you get to pick the best thing. On the light road, you pick last. So you pick the worst thing, which is probably bad. And then after the delivery, as it was explained to me, the point is after the delivery, you get to pick 2 of the kind of big, juicy rewards that only you get. Only the person who's taking the action gets 2 kind of end of delivery rewards. And you get 2 of them instead of 1. But if you take the dark road, you get 1. But nah. It costs you 3 lanterns. You get last pick on the dice. All for that. All for. And by the way, last pick on the dice not only hurts you, it helps your opponents. So it's like it's not even. It's listen. It's either ask me to set up Mosaic or ask me to take the light road on Merchants of the Dark Road. Those are the 2 things I just won't do in a game. No, I'm not gonna do it.
I think there's a really, really elegant, beautiful game hiding underneath all of the complications of Merchants of the Dark Road. And I almost predict that there will be a Merchants Express someday that will clean a lot of this stuff up. And then it'll be just as beautiful as the blinged out edition, but it'll cost 1/3 as much. And it's not going to have all these additional components and mechanics. It'll be like Seven Wonders Duel is to Seven Wonders or something like that. It's like really quick, really just focused and really clean.
With a path on the light road that is viable, maybe?
There'll be a gray road, and everyone will take the gray road.
There you go.
I don't know. I'm not going to design it for them.
By the way, I don't know if you meant to do this or you were working subconsciously, but Seven Wonders Duel is a great answer to Chad's question in the chat. I actually was gonna jokingly answer Blood Bowl is obviously the dueling game he's looking for, but Seven Wonders Duel is actually a nice 2-player dueling game. Although it's not really dueling, but whatever, a 2-player heads-up game.
2-player.
It's looking to actually dueling, then I guess not. Then Blood Bowl, obviously. Blood
It's got the word duel in it. I mean,
yeah,
if it's maybe.
it's fun. All right, last thing, I'm definitely over at this point. The mail call, I put this in the Discord, but it's sitting right in front of me. I am really excited about it. Apiary is in. It's funny, I actually pre-ordered Apiary or did the first printing order in part because we are definitely into insect-themed games. So Kingdom. So I actually showed, like, as I unboxed it, I showed it to Landis, and he was like pretty jazzed and excited about it. So yes, this one, I admit that I have some number of games. Listen, Carlos, it doesn't matter what the number is, okay? I have some number of games in shrink on my shelf. Apiary. Apiary is not going to be one of those games. It's sitting on my game table, and it's going to be opened and played before I even figure out where it goes on my shelf, because we're pretty excited about it.
Oh, hold on. Maury Povich just provided the results. We took a test. Oh, that was a lie.
Hey, when you saw the theme of Apiary, Nick, did the weirdness of the theme draw you in or make you think twice?
Oh, as far as it's futuristic and it's in space.
You almost said bees, right?
Bees.
Bees, I think.
Bees, right? Sorry, futuristic bees in space. It did not weird me out at all. I'm totally fine with that. Here's why. I'm assuming they still are borrowing from the behavior of bees in a beehive, and they're just putting them in space and amping up the cool, quote unquote, coolness factor of what a bee game would be by saying it's futuristic and in space. That is actually, I didn't, I haven't opened it yet and played it yet, but I feel like that's the vibe they went for. That what if bees still acted like bees? They're in a hive and they have a queen and they have a brood and you have to feed them and they want to spread out and expand, but not too much and blah, 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 right? They still behave like bees, but
in space.
but they're sent to space, right?
Right.
That actually, I like that. I like that. Yeah.
I want to jump in on that question.
I
Without the in space part, I probably wouldn't have given it a second look. Like the in space part makes me say, "Oh, interesting." Like, I'm into nature games, but I guess I'm not into like games that are like Mariposas, right? Something that's stuck on like one species or type of animal. I'm not sure how much you can get out of that, but then you throw it in space, and I'm like, oh, okay, I can dig it.
Have you played Honey Buzz?
And here,
I was going to say Honey Buzz.
No.
Yeah, see, that's just not his thing.
I pointed out too. There is also already at least one actual bee game. Here, I'll turn the question on its head a little bit, and I think I like this even more. I like this, the idea of there's a known entity that behaves in a certain way, bees, and now we're going to put them in space. I like that more than, hey, I'm going to hand you a new space game, and with random alien species who you don't really connect to and don't know why they behave the way they do, right? So that's kind of what this, you could also consider it like this. It's just a space game where the aliens are bees and they behave the way you expect bees to behave. So there you go.
But, okay, good topic. Okay, I'm not hanging up with you yet. I know we've been on for a while, but you didn't call last week, so you get twice the time, right? Man, you're right. I think about space games and Cosmic Encounters, First Light. These games where they try to create worlds and creatures and races, right? But there's no real connection to them, and I think what they're all trying to emulate is TI4, or Twilight Imperium, right? Where Twilight Imperium, I think, really hit the nail on the head because they built like their races that they have, the turtle race. I know what they do. They turtle up, right? They stay where they are. They're defensive, right? They tuck in. The the lions, right? The space lions.
The line trade, but that's fine.
They're traders, right? They sell. Then you got the virus,
that's a good one.
the like a mecha virus, like a you think of the Borg. You're right. Too many space games try to create their very, very own, and even fantasy falls for that too, where they work real hard to try to differentiate themselves from what other fantasy or space games were by creating their own worlds. And I just struggle to get into it because they create new names, new words, new sounds. I don't know how to pronounce them. Like, I'd rather you stick to some tropes that I can easily jump into, some no offense, stereotypes that I could easily connect with. I don't know, Nick, is that what you were talking about?
That's exactly right. And like, for the idea, that is why I like this, because bees and bee behavior is something that we have looked at. So, Chris, you don't know, I'm here in Wesley Chapel. You do know that. What you don't know about Wesley Chapel is it's a suburb of Tampa, but it's kind of the country. So I'm on 5.5 acres, and at one point we owned 100 or more animals.
I lock my doors and roll up my windows when I drive through there.
That's right. No, you don't have to. I mean, we have dogs, so and a driveway that's like 200 feet long. So I mean, we see you coming a long way away. It's fine. But point being, we had beehives. I admit we didn't pull the trigger on getting the nuke, the nucleus, the actual bees themselves. But we did the whole thing. We actually, it's kind of funny. I pat myself on the back for not pulling the trigger because I bought the beehives, the physical boxes, before fully educating, but then of course did not want to bring stinging living creatures onto the farm before I did educate myself. And then we learned all about bees, we're excited, we're going to do them, figured out that we needed to put the hive in different places, figured out there's a better time of year to do it. And so we put off getting them until the right time of year. And then the right time of year came around and the bee guy wasn't available. He's like, oh, I don't have any for sale. Check again, like in 6 months. We did. It still wasn't available. And then quite honestly, we just moved on. Like we never actually then did it. And maybe that was fate.
Where in all of that are you proud of yourself? Like I'm proud of myself. I started something that I never finished.
It was very
I didn't jump in and buy bees just so I could say I bought them, only to then have the hive die probably 3 days later because we know that part. We educated ourselves the correct way to do it, and then it turns out the correct way to do it
is to not do it.
Yes.
The only way to win is not to play.
I quoted that 2 episodes ago.
I know. I heard it on the replay. I listened to it on the replay.
We were talking about my man Nick Oben's Gloomhaven. I said the only way to win at Gloomhaven is to not play.
But yes, Carlos, you're exactly right. You read my comments correctly. Bees are a thing, a behavior species that we already connected to as a family. That's why I showed them to Landis. He was excited about it. And so putting them in space then just checks one extra box. We like the space theme. It's cool. And now bees are in space. That's cool too, Yeah.
Nick, I don't know if you're watching the chat, but this is great. It's comments in the chat are amazing. So during this call, we got Matt Harris saying, "Damn, I looked down and I grew a Gandalf beard during this call." And I thought, oh, that was great. Mike thought it was great. It was hilarious. Mike's laughing. I'm laughing. We're on camera laughing. Chad Stilson pops in. I changed from gray to white. and then Matt Harris pops in. My man Chad fought a whole ass Balrog during this call.
It was
a long fall.
You shall not touch.
This community is awesome.
Yeah, we're good times. All right. But no, that is all the topics I wanted to get. I wanted to pick Chris's brain on Kickstarters. I wanted to talk about Sobo, and I wanted to talk about Apiary. I'm done. You guys have a great rest of your night. Thank you very much. And there's still, almost enough time for half a call. It's great.
Hey, listen, a wizard is never late, never early, always on time.
All right, you gentlemen have a great night. Thank you again, Chris, for the chat. That was fun.
Thank
See you,
you.
Nick.
See ya.
Yep, bye-bye.
That was great. Let's jump back into the chat. We got an answer on the unmatched versus dice thrown from Chris, but we didn't get the answer from Mike. If you had an opinion, I know Chris, you said you hadn't played unmatched, but you played dice thrown and it was okay.
I was
So
fine.
you said
It
you
was
would try
fine.
something else. That's how bad it was. So you'd rather play
It
something
wasn't.
else.
I mean, it wasn't bad. I just feel like there's a lot of great games in the world. There must be. I mean, I want to try Unmatched. So,
Any opinion
what do you
from
guys think?
Washington? I got the this is Beans and Dice West Coast today. At this point.
Actually, I'm in Fort Lauderdale tonight.
Oh, you're in our neck of the woods.
Yeah.
No wonder it's so dark behind you. Any thoughts? Dice thrown versus unmatched.
Well, here's the thing. I never played Unmatched, and I only played
How?
because I moved away before you can get me to play a game.
I hosted multiple tournaments at your turn.
I know. And I've only played half a game of Dice Thrown.
That bad for you too.
Yeah, and well, I wouldn't say it was bad. It was just we ran out of time. But from all the things that I've read about Unmatched, I would probably be swaying more that way if it were me personally right now.
It must be good considering all the hype. At least to try. Which I haven't done,
Dice
so.
Thrown has so much hype.
It does, though.
It really does.
But you
But it's
had your
deserved,
Unmatched
right?
series, right?
I'm with y'all. I have both.
Mm-hmm.
I have a lot more unmatched than Dice Thrown, so maybe I'm a little jaded too. But what I found Dice Thrown felt like was 2-player King of Tokyo. So
Yeah, maybe I could see that.
Okay.
A lot of just I'm going to chuck dice and see what results I end up with, and then I'll trigger that ability or attack or defense based on my dice rolls. Whereas unmatched, because it's no dice, because it's all card, and if you learn your character in the card deck, you really do have that deterministic control.
Yeah.
I know what I'm getting into.
Do you know what the game that this game was with a co-designer, and when we initially started this, he wanted to do it with dice, and one of the big changes we made was we went to using cards, and it's specifically because the cards have character, and so they can be associated with monsters or whatever. But then you get to know the cards, and like when I play the game in my mind, I'm seeing a shape, and I'm like, I know that. Like when I look at a dungeon or a lair within the dungeon, and it has a certain shape, I'm thinking to myself, I know which cards, if they come up, will work well in that shape. And I know which attack icons, because I know the cards, go with those shapes. So, and the different attack icons have combo attacks if you use them correctly. So that's telling me, then I need to be thinking about doing these other things in that layer so that then I can make a combo attack if I can get the right card. None of that happens with dice.
You can't think about that type of arc, that long-term strategy thought, if you went dice. So as an example, roll and write would be Railroad Inc., right? So it's a roll and write. You roll dice, get icons, fill in the grid.
Right.
But then there's Silver and Gold we talked about earlier. Silver and Gold uses a deck system where you remove some of the cards so you don't have 100% knowledge, but you have an idea of what will come out, so you kind of start to plan your arc of attack of how you're going to place your shapes on the islands to fill them in. So you feel like you actually had control. And where Railroad Inc., depending on the dice rolls, it could be really wonky. And you just kind of have to throw that game out like, that last game, we have to chalk that up to a whole bunch of just left-hand turns.
Right.
We didn't get anything we needed. So,
I think the thing that makes dice games fun is the dice manipulation aspect of it. So being able to manipulate dice and have some agency, that's what makes a dice game fun. Otherwise, it's just craps with extra steps.
So I think with both of you not having played Unmatched, looking at Chad Stilson Scutchman, both of you not having played Unmatched, but giving your feelings on Dice Throne, and me having played both, I think from the consensus from this group would be Unmatched or any other game. Dice Throne loses. No offense to all the hype for the Dice Throne lovers. We had another question in the chat. Here's a deeper one. It's Matt Harris popped in there saying, from New Hampshire, I believe. I could use some advice trying to transition to a college D&D club to an overall tabletop/board game club. What might be a good game to win people over? So we're talking about RPG years. So we were all there. We were all there in our late teens, early 20s, and probably got introduced to RPGs early on, and that kind of led us into tabletop. In today's market, what would be a good transition game? And if someone says Gloomhaven, I'm hanging up the whole call.
I think I would want to dig into the premise of why you would want to convert these people anyway. I mean, they have their own religion. Why can't you let them worship at the altar of their choice?
Oh my gosh.
But in all seriousness, I mean, there's different reasons why you might want to convert them, right? Because maybe you want to have an experience that allows certain category of player in who isn't comfortable with the acting aspect of RPGs. Or maybe you want it to be a more compressed story arc, or you want to take away the need for DMing. And so I think it really depends on exactly what's motivating this, that you'll get a different answer. Because like the one I would say is Adventures in Middle-earth, the Lord of the Rings game, because it's kind of like a tabletop RPG. It's the very simple answer. But if what you're trying to do is maybe squeeze it down so it plays faster, then that's not actually the right answer, because those games can take a really long time.
Well, when there's a vacuum of information, it gets filled, right?
Yep. Well,
in your mind, think of a reason he might want to make that change, and what would you fill it with? I'll jump in first. For me, I think that kind of change would become, in college, it's that transition. Like you start off as a freshman, things are easy. You got all day. You got all the time in the world, and you're meeting up with your friends and doing the same game over and over again. But as you get later into your career in college, you're really having to knuckle down. You don't have all the time and capacity you need because you're in your major. You're working hard. So you want that joyous moment together with friends, but you need it kind of compressed to that one night a week, right? You have to fit it in that one night a week. For me, it'd be like Zombicide 2nd Edition, right? You don't need the same group of people every time you do it. And then you fill in the gap that Zombicide has on an RPG game, right? You narrate, I'm kicking down this door. Oh, look, there's a bunch of zombies. Blacka, 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 blacka. Hit him with my chopper. It blends or starts to get towards that board gamey, but still cooperative, still allows for some narrative fun stories. And then because it is dice-based and card flip-based on like what you get, it will still allow for some crazy stand-up moments. Like, I can't believe we opened that door and there were that many zombies and there was a big baddie there and we were able to knock them all out with X. So I would say Zombicide would be my answer, and I'll let y'all pop in.
I was going to say Darkest Dungeon 2. That's a little bit of a dungeon crawl romp. That's I heard the second one is considerably better than the first one and more enjoyable. But if you want to go a little bit heavier than that, and you have the money to spend, I was thinking like Oathsworn, where you actually have your choice of either a dice system and or a card system, and you can flip back and forth within the same scenario, or throughout the entire story you can go back and forth depending on how you want to play it. And each person can play how they want to play it. They could choose dice or cards. And it's story based, and there is, a build up of characters, and I would think if you're an RPG, you want some sort of story behind it, if that's the type of thing you're looking for. And Darkest Dungeon would give you those quick one-offs, and Oathsworn would give you that longer, let's meet up every couple of weeks or every month and play a scenario type of setup.
Another one, if the goal is to make it a lot more light or even silly, because some of the D&Ds, it's like very, I don't know, it could get kind of like into really dark stuff. Mm-hmm. If you're trying to kind of lighten up the atmosphere, then you could steer all the way to the other end and do something like Clank.
Oh, there you go.
Because it's got the theme, sort of, but it's a very lighthearted take on it. Or you could go all the way to Munchkin, even.
No, I don't know.
Something really silly. But I would stop at Clank, probably.
And there's also the legacy version. So if you'd still want to keep that camaraderie of small group, you just have to compress it into a smaller time space. The Clank Legacy version would be a great one too. Good call out.
And Incorporated, I believe, has really, really good ratings. I haven't played it, but apparently people really like that.
Mm.
I don't see any. Let's see. Go back into the chats.
I was going to troll you and say, well, if you're not going to allow Gloomhaven as an answer, maybe I'll say Frosthaven or Jaws of the Lion.
You know, hey, Jaws of the Lion, I still like it. I think we've got 5 episodes on video. I love the way it walked. What it did that Gloomhaven didn't do was it kind of walked me in. It led me step by step, game by game, helping me with the deck building piece. Less decisions to make on the deck building aspect so that I can play more of the rules and learn the game. I think Jaws of the Lion's a great one, too.
Yeah. Well, I super respect how they made it such an enjoyable experience, carrying over a lot of the experience from Gloomhaven, but a much more affordable package.
Yeah.
That opens it up to a lot more people.
Chad says, I'm an artist and designer, and frankly, the Dice Throne art makes me want to throw myself off in
off the top of Orthanc.
I find that art to be very I don't know. I won't call it comic booky.
Yeah, it is.
But I really love what Restoration Games has done. Mondo, is it? Mondo and Restoration work together to make Unmatched. That art for Unmatched to me is so awesome. Like each box set being the way they did the art for the dinosaurs of Jurassic Park versus the art for Buffy versus the art for the classical, we're talking like Invisible Man and Dr. Jekyll. I mean, the art in Unmatched supersedes anything that I see in Dice Throne.
I agree. You know what it looks like is comic book characters from the 1970s in Unmatched.
In Unmatched?
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's got that really classic feel to it in terms of how they use line, and the palettes also are pretty similar.
Yeah.
And not a lot of like definition, they don't line art a lot of that, which is what I like. Like I like the way it's almost like layered colors.
Exactly.
Chad says, I appreciate your feedback. Thank you. I was leaning towards Unmatched, so I guess we helped.
Good choice.
Leaning. Let's see here. What about Role Player? I've played it once. It was not a hit for me. Did anybody have any feelings or thoughts on Role Player?
I like Role Player with the expansions. I would say you have to throw at least one of the expansions in there. But I was also going to say for the RPG guy, Role Player Adventures is, I just don't know how big the group is. But Role Player Adventures, from the little bit that I have played, I need to go back to it. Really cool dice mechanic for, if you're trying to get past a gate and, maybe you can pick the lock, you can chuck dice, but then each player also has cards in their hands that help mitigate a bad roll, possibly. Like, this card can manipulate a blue die and turn it into a white die at this value. And, this card can play with, and so you can play off of each other's cards to make your rolls better. But then there's also this system where it'll say you are fighting, an enraged goblin. So you would turn to the goblin page and then you would pull out the enraged card and you would apply those to the goblin in the book so you could see like what you had to roll and then what additional things he had against you or what would make it harder to defeat him. And it's a very cool story. Like the maps change when you put cards out. They change the locations up, and I enjoy those. I enjoy that whole universe. Because you got like cartographers and you got lockup, and I enjoy that whole world. I know it's not for everybody, and sometimes it does get a little long in the tooth with how much they actually create from it. But I do like that whole universe.
Good call out with the Role Player, the cooperative version, because it got me thinking about Unmatched and their new title that I don't even think is released yet, but I saw a review on the Dice Tower, and I think it got all 9s, like above 9s, for the Unmatched Adventures, Tales, and I can't remember the rest of that title. but it's now unmatched, and I think it's 4 players, cooperative, and playing different adventures, and that to me sounds awesome.
Next week, if you're still listening, because I know you were so against it when we were talking about this, when they first started talking about that game, I would love to hear if Ron actually is now interested in playing it, or if he already has, and what his thoughts are on it.
Yeah, I know that he lost some of the feelings when he saw the setting that they were putting it in, like it
And the
it really didn't
cooperative
jive.
part of it.
Huh.
So
Yeah.
I'm curious to see if he watches that review from Dice Tower. Will that change? Because I was kind of poo-pooing it as well, like the theme, the characters, Tesla, right? None of that really stood out for me, Nikola Tesla. But when I saw the review and they talked about how it plays as a co-op,
Yeah.
like, oh, okay, I think I'm back on board. It's on my list.
Yeah.
Matt Harris says the goal is to be more inclusive and have some variety to build a bigger community. I think the titles that we shared will help do that in different approaches.
Yeah. Agreed.
Does that change your answer, Chris?
Well, I'm thinking. Yeah, so to me, I think the biggest barrier to entry on D&D is the commitment to learn the system. There is a little bit of this thing that some people don't like acting, but you can kind of get around that by just playing to the mechanics and forgetting that you're an elf or whatever. So I think to me, the biggest barrier to entry is the system. So I would be looking at a game that allows you to have a character, but it doesn't have really complicated leveling. And, like when you play D&D, even 5e, there's all these formulas for how do you populate the different attributes and stuff like that. And even that is simplified compared to some of the other versions. So yeah, I'd be looking for a game that has just a couple attributes, maybe 3 or 4 attributes for each character. And I would be looking for a game where there's relatively flat hierarchy in the other aspects of the characters. So you may be collecting cards that give you abilities or items or something, but there isn't a whole bunch of stacking or prerequisite systems that you have to fulfill in order to do certain things. And something like, just to tie these two conversations together, something like Dice Throne, where there's like literally a page of things you have to read about your particular character and how to use your dice. That's not fun for somebody who comes in and they don't know all this stuff and everybody else does. And so they're just there, they're trying desperately to digest all of this text and they're just not getting it. And it's really hard when you have a book this thick that tells you about all the character classes and the spells of, this character class and all of this. So I would be looking for a tabletop RPG that has a really low barrier to entry. So
you described a board game though, because in your description, the board game you described is one that Chad Stilson brought up here. He says, I also think Star Wars Outer Rim would be a good translation for RPGers. It has a lot of narrative, and you're right.
I don't in any way disagree with that.
Very few character, what'd you call them, characteristics or attributes, I think is the word you used.
Yeah.
So your ship has some attributes, your characters has some attributes. There's not prerequisites to deal with. Right. Cards are added to the ship, added to the character to modify the attributes. So Chad's got a valid. Chad's in line with what you're thinking, like a Star Wars Outer Rim.
Absolutely. Yeah, this is exactly what I'm talking about.
Matt Harris says Zombicide looks cool. Haven't heard of it before. Thank you, Carlos. Hey, I get to give myself an achievement.
Yeah, and actually, Zombicide's another good example. I mean, Zombicide, you don't have to read through a 200-page manual with all kinds of different spells. Right?
No, and on the back of the character card is the outline of each of the abilities.
Yeah.
I think Chad's right. Suggested role player and Outer Rim for the D&D crowd. I think those are great suggestions for bringing that group in. So that gets us to the end of the show. We got to, man, you stick around every time, Chris. Robert and I called Robert this week because he's still getting over what he was dealing with out in Louisiana. So he's not on the show this week. He should be back next week. So he should be 100% healed up, ready to go next week. And he and I were talking, And I told him, with Chris being on the show, he's like, "Oh, I'm not worried because Chris always hangs out to the whole show." So I know you'll have a buddy with you the whole time.
There was one time I had to leave early, but yeah, I love hanging out with you guys. You're fun.
He just hangs. Chris hangs. So thank you so much. I did have one question, Chris, before I let you go, before we end off the show. Right. So I'm looking at this PDF, and I recently got into the Kindle Scribe. Is a platform that Kindle put out last year, which is a e-reader display system using the pencil for marking. And there are many companies right now that are putting out these e-readers, like Remarkable and others that put out an e-reader that has a pen for scribing. And I think, man, that would be, how could we turn this PDF that we have of this book into using the formats that Kindle allows or Amazon allows, that allows you to jot notes right onto that. Has that ever come up before? Is it a path that you've gone down?
Yeah, so I looked into Kindleizing the book, and it's basically a huge hassle. And a lot of it has to do with the fact that things need to be able to flow. So on a book like this, you don't want these encounters spreading from one page to the next.
Right.
Like that's just not how a choose your own adventure book is. So it is a page or it's part of a page. And when you Kindleize it, depending on exactly what fonts people are using for accessibility or their zoom settings and stuff like that, it changes the pagination in complicated ways. So it's just like this really big lift to make it happen in this particular kind of a project. So I didn't do it for this one. More broadly, though, you could imagine a type of game where the stuff in the book is much smaller chunks, and they can just pop from one page to the next as needed. And then you could use the commenting functions of the e-reader to record a person's changes to that world. So when you're on encounter 115, you'd maybe do a thing. And in order to record what you did, you make a mark inside of the PDF. And then if you ever come back to that E115, or possibly, one of the adjacent encounters, it says, check to see if you put a mark on the encounter just before this one. So like you're on this, and then maybe something happens. So you can embed information inside of the flow of the book. And then when you want to, start from scratch, you just wipe all of your annotations out of it. So that's probably how I would approach that from a design or implementation standpoint. But I didn't try to do anything like that for this game.
Very cool to hear that you thought about it too. Like me, I'm a very much a Kindle consumer. Because I can get my Audible on it, I can get my books on it, I can read it at night without having the lights on, so wifey can sleep while I read. So the idea that as a game designer, and now a book publisher, right? These are things you've thought about that I've thought about. That's pretty cool.
Yeah, there's some pretty cool technology out there.
Mike, any last words for the folks at home who've been watching? Wayne Kruger reminds us, if you haven't yet, please give the show a thumbs up. Drop a comment in the comments. Let us know what you liked about the conversations tonight, or anything that you want us to talk about next week. That helps get us out there to your friends in the gaming community, so we can have more awesome conversations with y'all. Mike, any closing thoughts for the folks at home?
Not really, man. Just keep playing games and keep getting together and having a good time.
Yeah. How long are you down in Florida?
I'm gonna fly back Tuesday.
Oh, it's a short one then.
Yeah, it's a short one.
All right.
Yeah.
Glad to see you on the same time zone at least.
Yeah.
Chris, let the folks at home know where they can find out more information about the Dungeon Crawler Combo, the Kickstarter you have going on now.
Yeah, go to ferventworkshop.com, FERVENTWORKSHOP.com. Link is in the chat and everything. And then it says the Kickstarter is live right now, and just click that link. It'll take you to the Kickstarter. And I'll just make my closing comment to reiterate what I said to Nick in long form, that creating stuff is a big part of what makes us human. And you don't have to sell something in order to create something. So have fun doing that stuff. And it was so nice to hear that he was doing it with his son, and it gave me a warm feeling.
Agreed. Well, folks, thank you so much for sticking around. Glad to have you. Glad to have the folks in the chat today. Were hilarious. I'm loving it. The community is what really drives a lot of this. To me, like this show here is for me. It's big about getting the feedback from the community, getting the community involved. People calling in and taking over the show is my favorite part of this. So please do more of that. Call in, take over the show, jump into the chats, keep it going. I continue to ask for prayers for my family and for us here in the show. And I pray that God blesses you and your family, and that we catch you all on the next one. So thanks for watching. We'll catch you all on the next one. Good night,
Thanks,
everybody.
Carlos.
Happy gaming.
Thanks for watching the Beans and Dice podcast. Don't forget to like and subscribe.
Bye, everybody.